Okay, we're doing lesson 4.8, zeros in the product. This is, let's look at the essential question. The essential question is, how do you know you have the correct number of decimal places in your product? So here's our connection. When decimals are multiplied, the product may not have enough digits to place the decimal point. In these cases, you may need to write additional zeros in the placeholder. We do this when we do 1/10 of something. Sometimes we have to move it, like if we got 9/10 and we want what's 1/10 of 9/10. We know we have to move the decimal a tenth place, so we just put a zero in that spot. So students are raising tropical garden snails and measuring the distance of the snail's travel in 1 minute. Chris' snail travels a distance of 2/10. Jamie's snail travels 4/10 as far as Chris's snail. How far did Jamie's snail travel? So if I look at this, I'm multiplying 4/10 times 2/10. So I know my number is going to be the hundredths, because a tenth times a tenth is a hundredth. So determine the position of the decimal point. Since a tenth are being multiplied by a tenth, we need to show a hundredth. So if I look here and I multiply it, I have an 8. Well, remember what I said at 1, 2 out, 1, 2 in? What am I going to put to hold that spot so my decimal doesn't slide over to the 8? I'm going to put a 0, and it's 8 hundredths. And that makes sense because we have to be in the hundreds, because a tenth times a tenth is a hundredth. So let's look here. So what do? What are the whole numbers you're multiplying? I'm really thinking of 30 times 2. So if I do those as whole numbers, I get 60. But now I got to think about, I've got 100 times a tenth, so I know my number is going to be in the thousandths. So it's going to be in the thousandth spot. So I know I got to move it to get rid of the decimal. 1, 2, 3. So 3, I got to go in 3. 1, 2, 3. That's the thousandths place. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Does that make sense? So I know this is 6 hundredths or 60 thousandths. Alright, let's try one more, and then you guys are going to start on your own. You're good at multiplying. It's just a matter of getting used to moving the decimal and putting the 0 in that spot. So here I have, if I think of it as a whole number, I have 2 times 5, which is 10. And now I've got to think a hundredth times a tenth. Move it 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's my answer. And I know a tenth times a hundredth is a thousandths. So it's 10 hundredths, or 1 hundredths, or 10 thousandths. All right. So let's move on to this page, and on this page it just says hundreds are multiplied by tenths, so we should be in the thousandths. So we're going to have to put a 0 there. They did the problem for us, but we 2 out, 3 back in. So these aren't hard multiplication ones, guys, so I would like you to do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Do 1 from this row. Let's do these quickly together. This one you can do on your own, you just multiply it. Here we've got to do some thinking of what we already know. So what times 2 is going to get me to 8 as a whole number? Well, I know 4 times 2 is going to get me to 8. But I have a tenth here, and I've got to have 100 here. So what does my decimal have to, what does my part of the whole, or what does my number have to be? Well, I know a tenth times a tenth is a hundredth. So what am I going to have to do? I don't have a decimal. Here I'm moving it 1 spot. Here I'm moving it 2 spots. If I go here, I'm moving it back in 2 spots. So it's 4 tenths. So it's just a matter of, once again, doing it as a whole number. 9 times what gets me to 63? Well, 9 times 7 gets me to 63. But now I got to look here. I have 100th, but I got to get to 1,000. So 100th times what gets me to 1,000th? Times 10. So this has to be in the 10th spot. Alright, so we have one of those. We'll come back and unlock the problem if we have time. Your homework is that same old routine, evens, 1 or 2, and all of these. Okay, let's give some multiplying decimals a shot.